is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
All right, welcome to the show. Welcome to Kentucky's Voice. This is the first show after the new year where we get to have all three of the primary superhosts of Kentucky's Voice, the superhost. You know, just like there's an Airbnb has superhost. Well, we have superhost on this show.
I feel super good.
So yeah, exactly right. So we are the super well, we're okay. We're adequate host for Kentucky's Voice. So we hope you enjoy it. But yeah, so guys, Jim, we have Jim Waters and Bob Scott. We have a new set, so I've got to figure out how to look at you guys. And so, it used to be a horseshoe, now left to right. So
I like this set.
You like this set? Yeah, that kind of flows. All right.
Yeah. It's good to have Bob in the studio, too.
You're going to get a little bit of a crink in the neck today, I'm afraid, Tom.
Exactly.
Welcome, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Yeah. So anyway, happy
Good to
New
be
Year's,
here, brother.
guys. Boy, a lot of stuff going on right now internationally and in this state. And so we're going to cover a lot of that today. Of course, the session, the Kentucky House and Senate, I think, they both started this yesterday or this week. Yeah. And so, of course, last night, Andy Beshear had his State of the Commonwealth speech. And so we've got a lot to talk about there. I also wanted to talk about the Somali issue. But, believe it or not, Louisville has a huge Somali community. Yeah. It's like one of the biggest Somali communities in the country. Yeah. I just figured this out here recently. So I got
asked, hey, is anybody looking at Kentucky on this?
Well,
on
you know
issues?
what? I started doing some searching.
Yeah.
I said, Somali daycare, where are you? And so we're going to do some work on that and see if we can find something going on there. Also, this shooting in Minneapolis, we need to touch on that today. But Jim, let's jump right into the session. Yeah. What's going on in Frankfort?
The General Assembly began its session, 2026 session on Tuesday, and as is required by our state constitution, the governor must present his budget. And so last night was Governor Andy Beshear's final budget, State of the Commonwealth and budget speech to the legislature. He'll have one more State of the Commonwealth to give. But it was interesting that there was a lot of talk about whether this was really a speech for Kentucky or for his campaign. And
I think we know the answer to that.
I think you could tell from the very beginning where he said, this is my final budget speech in this position or in this job. And, of course, everybody knew what he was talking about. A little bit different, too, last night, just a point to make and let everyone know. Our Capitol is going through a major renovation, remodeling. Nothing is happening inside the Capitol. Everything that has been happening there has had to happen somewhere else. So normally the governor would come in and the legislature really would be in charge of this event. But last night it was obvious that it was Beshear and his campaign team that were pretty much establishing the venue. You had folks up behind him holding signs. We'll see that in a minute. I have a clip about education, and he was, of course, pushing public education. And there were people holding signs. I thought that was convenient that was all planned out there. So
that and the
it was a little
ovations.
different.
He had like 15 standing ovations.
And that's not necessarily, that alone is not necessarily that unusual. It was more robust last night because usually in the House chambers where they meet as a joint session when the governor speaks, usually it's a lot more subdued than it was last night. It had much more of a campaign feel.
Sort of more of a pep rally.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't quite that, but it was certainly different than it would have been. So, folks, get used to this for the next 3 or 4 years. This is going to be the way it is as the Capitol is undergoing major renovation work there. So,
all hail King Andy.
Yeah, well, and, I think and of course, C-SPAN carried that speech last night, and I'm sure it's going to get some attention nationally as well. And Beshear tried to present himself as as a reasonable alternative to Trump. He attacked Trump in the speech. We can talk about that, maybe a couple points. And but some hypocrisy there, too. It's one thing to not like tariffs, but it's something else to then praise the results of tariffs, such as jobs coming back to Kentucky.
What a surprise.
So, we've got some things to talk about on that.
Very good. All right, well, this is going to be a great show. We got a lot lined up. So, listen, like I said, first show after the new year with all three of us. We appreciate you as a listener, as a viewer, and all the support you've given this project over the past year. This is a listener-supported project. We ask you to consider supporting us with your financial and prayers and everything else. So And the way to do that is going to be on the screen after the segment. We'll be right back.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
About empowering our kids to do better. As it says in Psalms, children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from Him. Our priority always must be the future, and our future is molded in our public schools. I am unapologetically a 100% pro-public education governor. Every budget I proposed has invested in our school system, starting with our educators. Once again, I'll be doing what's right. I'm proposing $159 million for mandatory raises for our educators and a proposal to increase take-home pay by nearly 7%. My budget also increases education funding per pupil, and it adds $560 million to our teachers' retirements. But that leads me to the most important choice in this session for our future, our businesses, our families, and our children. The single most effective way we succeed in this next budget is by funding pre-K for all.
There we go. So in other words, in order for me to run for president, I need money from the teachers union. So I'm going to make sure I have a really nice package here that gives a lot of money to the teachers and the teachers unions. And so, and guys, you know, he's children are so important to me. All this education. Yeah, but you want to trans our kids. You want drag queen story hour in our schools, you know, and then
not to even mention the fact that he is probably one of the most pro-abortion governors not just in the history of Kentucky, but in the history of our nation.
That's exactly right.
You know, as well.
Yeah, and at the same time, he absolutely will go to the mat to keep parents from having the freedom and the right to determine their kids' education.
Exactly.
Let's talk for a minute, if we can, about this pre-K idea, because he's made this a big point in his campaign. And Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman, this is going to be her mantra as she runs for governor and ramps up to run for governor. Let's be clear about this. There is absolutely no evidence that universal pre-K is something that has a long-term impact on children. In fact, there is even some research coming out now that talking about the harmful effects it can have over time. If you listen closely to the governor last night, he talked about a source says this or a study says this, but there was nothing about how much we're going to spend on this or how much he wants to spend. We've heard $150 billion. We've heard $200 million on this for something that there is no evidence that it works. Now, all of us, I think, would be in favor of, of providing programs for young children, especially those from low-income homes, that will help them, that will make a difference in their lives and provide them a better education. But there's no evidence that this does. And ironically, there's a lot of evidence, guys, that school choice throughout the country is having this huge positive impact, especially on lower income kids and minority kids and kids from broken homes and kids from broken communities.
That's right.
And it's ironic that the program that there is no evidence that this is good at best and evidence that it's harmful, he's latched onto this as his main policy for education, whereas the programs that there is a lot of evidence that this works, he will go to the mat to oppose.
It fits this left-wing worldview that we need to institutionalize our young people into government school systems, government-ran school systems from as early age as possible. I mean, what's this pre-K? This is like 4 or 5 years old. So starting there, and then of course, the dream for most left-wing ideologues of a lifestyle is to be in college until you're 30, right? And so So you've got from 5 years old to 30, right? You're immersed in this left-wing indoctrination system, which I know I'm using a little hyperbolic language here, but everybody understands what public education is now. It's basically a secular seminary for your kids.
That's right. And there's a study from Vanderbilt, extensive study showing that a lot of these programs can actually have harmful effect.
That's right, because it's daycare. School, public education is basically just daycare.
And it also
it's state-sponsored daycare.
Yeah, and it also can hurt faith-based programs, programs that have been started by the private sector, for example. Right. So why don't we see? He's his ideology. He's very ideological about it's got to be publicly done. It's got to be done by the government. It's got to be done by a government agency. And the reason is, let's just be honest, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. They can control the curriculum. They can control what kids learn. Mm-hmm. They can't control that in a faith-based daycare. They can't.
It's a big financial win for a government program like the public education and it's just and Bob, a lot of this is just the idea of we just need to take our kids away from our parents for 8 to 10 hours a day for education for so many years. I think we're starting to reevaluate that now. It's like, what is the real value of doing that? When I look at homeschool kids, and I know a lot of families that homeschool their kids, they spend maybe 2 hours a day, with educating their kid,
right?
And they can stay at home. And they come out by the time they're a senior in high school much well-educated, much better educated, much more
statistically, that's a fact.
That's right.
The kids. This really is not hard, to figure out. But the kids that are either educated at home or go to a faith-based or through a faith-based curriculum are way ahead.
Way ahead.
I'm a homeschooling parent. We homeschooled 3 daughters, and we got more done in 4 hours in a day. And then the public system did in 7 or 8 hours. But also, there's different ways of educating. We're seeing that not every kid should go to college. We were just talking with somebody the other night that they want to do welding and they want to do these trades. We've got young people in their 20s who are getting a 6-month certification at a trade school, and they have homes that are paid for, vehicles that are paid for, and they're a head start on their families. But you never hear that. You don't hear that from Beshear. All it is it's got to be publicly read. It's got to be whatever the teachers union narrative is, and that's what that's the song he's going to sing. He's hoping that will help him nationally. I think he's hoping that will, when he gets on a national platform more, that's going to be something he can point to, that, hey, I stopped school choice in Kentucky and I promoted increasing pay for teachers, for example, but that mean Republican legislature, they wouldn't come along with me. They wouldn't do this. When in fact, the legislature in Kentucky, let's just be clear about this, they have increased funding for K through 12 education by a significant amount in recent years. It's not all in the SEEK formula. That's only one portion of funding that schools get. It's across the board. They've given local districts lump sums of funds to do whatever they need to do in that area. And Bob, I would much rather Frankfurt do that than some top-down, we're going to pay all teachers this, no matter what kind of job they're doing, no matter what they teach, no matter how much of a need there is for them. I mean, we have a great need in Kentucky for physics teachers, and yet we're paying physical ed teachers, PE teachers, and basket weaving teachers as much as we're paying physics teachers. Where's the incentive there for a person to go and teach physics in our schools?
Yeah, it's crazy, and plus, he opened his speech there with a scripture. He was quoting Psalms, or saying, Psalms says this about the children and all this, and it's unique that Beshear has a tendency to refer to his faith very often. Whenever he's pushing these policies, these ideas, he wants to somehow anchor it into some sort of faith position, and we've talked a lot about that. We've analyzed that about a lot on this show, and I think it's worth pointing out again that he seems to have this view that faith gives him the right to have the compassion to put his left-wing policies into place, and it's so faith somehow lines up with left-wing ideology, where our response is, well, that's a toxic empathy. It's not empathetic to allow the LGBT agenda to be taught to your children.
Uses, and he always has, faith to suit his narrative.
His narrative.
Pure
That's exactly right.
Well, he
exactly
mentioned several times last night. One of those he likes to use is kind of a backhanded slap against those who oppose the LGBTQ ideology and agenda, and he'll say, "Well, we're supposed to love everybody," and that's true.
Love is
but
love. Yeah, right.
rejoices not in iniquity, but in the truth,
That's
and
right.
that's what
That's
the
exactly right.
we never hear that scripture.
That's
from
right.
him, so.
You have to balance truth and love,
Yeah.
and so when you don't do that, if it's just nothing but just love and empathy and overt compassion, it becomes toxic and hurtful for the person.
But
you're trying to love.
I will say this: most people, unfortunately, don't think about these issues, and they're going to be taken in. I think Beshear is going to be a formidable
He's going to
opponent
be
on the
effective
national
in that,
stage,
especially with women, especially because that's what he's been strong with. He's been strong with suburban women, and it's because they like that narrative. that
and they
kindness
don't
first.
like Trump.
Yeah, they don't like Trump. Right, they don't like the harsh, J.D. Vance Trump style. So interesting stuff. So we'll see. Is it going to be Beshear Vance? And but I tell you what, in this next segment, Jim, I want to talk about the Republican legislature and what their agenda is, what to look forward to, what we need to be watching out for. Are the rhinos going to control the session, or are we going to get some good MAGA policies? And so I'm really curious to see where that's going to go. So we'll be right back. The session's open, and we're going to talk about that in this next segment on Kentucky's Voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We have a special lineup today of all the key super hosts of the program, Bob Scott, Jim Waters, and Tom Fallbush, on one panel live in the same room. It's awesome. Lots of energy, lots of electricity in the air. It's amazing. We're going to start, debating and.
Whenever Bob shows up, there's always all this.
There's always something going on. So,
Just like,
but no, actually, we want to say this too. You were talking about the, the governor's State of the Commonwealth speech last night, and also the opening of the General Assembly in Frankfurt. But we want to hear your thoughts. So, if you watched that speech last night, you have any comments you want to say about Governor Andy King? Andy, want to hear what you have to say. So text us at 502-571-0970, 502-571-0970. There we go. No Kings on the screen there. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, or any comments about the Republican agenda for the General Assembly for this year. And for those that don't follow state politics very much, let me just kind of a big picture of what happens. In Kentucky, we have our legislative sessions every 2 years. And so this is the cycle.
well, we have session every year, but we have a budget session.
Budget session.
This is
Okay,
a
there
budget
we go.
session.
Budget session. Okay, got it. It's a session every year, but the budget session, which is it's a major session, happens every 2 years. So that's what's going on this week. So
in the even numbered years,
even number of years,
which
okay,
is we're into right now. A couple other things, one other thing on the speech last night.
Yeah.
Beshear wanted to appear to be attacking Trump on his tariff policy. But it's ironic because in one breath he was criticizing Trump's tariffs, and then the next he was taking credit for manufacturing investments, for example, like the $3 billion that GE is investing in Kentucky manufacturing,
right. That's right.
which was influenced by the pressure brought by the tariffs to bring the jobs back to Kentucky from where? From overseas.
That's exactly right.
And so this to me shows a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with this guy. He gets by with it a lot of times because of his demeanor, because of his rhetoric, because he's a Mr. Rogers type political personality. But let's not be fooled here. He's running, and he wants to be the anti-Trump. He wants to attack Trump. Yeah. And so we heard some of that last night. The other thing I would mention is, and something we've talked about before, I think, on here, and you all have as well on your shows, but, Beshear is taking credit for the increased economic development that we've seen in Kentucky. But this really does not sit well with the legislature. In fact, in the statement they issued last night following the speech, They said Kentucky is well positioned. This is from the leadership of the General Assembly, which is supermajority Republican, overwhelming. I mean, Democrats are really a scarce commodity in the terms of the legislature. But the leadership said Kentucky is well positioned because of the sound, fiscally responsible policies enacted by the Republican supermajorities, often overriding gubernatorial vetoes to do so.
Boom.
These policies have produced a record budget reserve trust fund and allowed us to responsibly lower the state income tax. Our legislative focus will remain on protecting core investments, ensuring responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars, and avoiding commitments the Commonwealth cannot sustain. We will continue to prioritize measured growth, accountability, and long-term stability. And so I think it's really important to point out that the very policies that have brought GE and manufacturing here and all of the increase that we've seen were done in spite of Governor Beshear's positions on these issues. For example, right to work. We said this several years ago, in fact, back in 2014 and 15, when really this began to happen here in 2017, when the state passed right to work. We said that this in 5 years will bring increased manufacturing opportunities like we have never seen. And that's exactly what the governor said had happened. But it's ironic. He at one time proposed getting rid of some of these policies that did create this economic activity. So very much a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde approach. He wants to take credit for this, and yet he was opposed to the policies that allowed this to happen. I think it's important for voters to keep that in mind, to know that.
That's right. Yeah, you just hate to see him take credit for something that he has no business taking credit for.
But we're benefiting either way, so we can talk about that too. And of course, we need to be careful. This Blue Oval job and some of the incentives that were given, there were lots of incentives given. There was a forgivable loan given of over $200 million. My question is, the legislature needs to demand repayment of that loan if the conditions for that loan are not met in terms of the creation of jobs at the wage level that they promised.
That's right. Exactly right. Because Blue Oval, Ford and the state took a risk on electric vehicles, and it didn't pan out.
And why did they take that risk?
It's because of government incentives, because of left-wing views of the world.
And guys, if it's a good risk, the private sector will do it. If it's a good thing, the private sector will take that risk.
That's right.
If the private sector is not doing that, that's a signal that government certainly should not be putting us taxpayers on the hook for those types of projects.
But when the government basically puts its hand on the scales in any sort of in the economy, in any sort of industry, it just artificially modifies the decision-making processes, and and then here's what happens: we end up losing a lot of money with this plant. But however, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. is going to benefit Kentucky, because Kentucky is a strong fossil fuel state, right? We have coal, we've got oil, we've got gas, and we can actually produce energy cheaper than anybody in the world.
And those are all things that the previous administration federally was trying to shut down.
That's right.
And had and was working very hard to stop that. And that is a strength of Kentucky and a lot of other states. And that is something I know we as a group or as a tandem stand very strongly behind with regard to the fossil fuels, and because it really is a real strength. And then also we're also looking at nuclear energy as well. That's right. Moving forward, there's so many things. I feel Kentucky especially is well positioned in a cusp to be a leader. On this.
Well, and you go back to the Barack Obama administration where they said they would, you can open a coal mine, but you're going to go bankrupt. In other words, that was their intention.
Again, putting their finger on the scale that Tom was just talking about.
But we've got all kinds of energy in our state, not just coal, natural gas. We've got all kinds of natural gas. And this is a great opportunity for Kentucky to benefit, for example, from the AI, growth in AI and the tremendous amount
and it's
of power.
Here whether we like it or not.
And it wasn't even talked about last night. It really was not addressed. And so, you've got to wonder, here's this guy, politician, who wants to present himself as a forward-thinking politician, and yet we didn't hear anything much about that at all last night.
We had a text come in from a viewer. It says, Andy Beshear baited Kentucky citizens during COVID with $1 million lottery to get the COVID shot. He's no better than someone who manipulates people. So there we go. Thanks for that comment.
Said some other things too we can't say on the air. But
that's right. Yeah, we'll use some of the language you use. But
if I can put a plug in here for my column on Substack, that's one of the issues I really hammered on was is Andy Beshear a moderate and
No.
the fact when you start bullet pointing his radical policies, which we do in that column, you can find it there on Kentucky's Voice, the Substack account that we have.
He's a left winger, but he wears a moderate skin suit.
And go back to the COVID, and that's a good example of that. Businesses suffered. He didn't have any idea how businesses run. He thinks, you can just snap your fingers and recover from years of government shutdown and regulation and heavy-handedness by the government. And ironically, churches were punished, and people who went to churches were punished, and yet the big box stores were allowed to they were considered essential. Liquor stores were considered
keep the liquor
essential.
stores open,
but what about the small mom and pop businesses? That were destroyed. And yet I think our electorate, unfortunately, guys, has a very short-term memory when it comes to elections and votes.
Yeah, we'll see if he has any national traction. Well, listen, we have a minute left in this segment. Let's tease what the agenda is for the Republicans in the legislature.
I think we're going to be looking at tax, whether we're going to get another income tax break in our state. I think housing is going to be a big issue. It's a big issue, and we've got to address it. But what's the best way to address it?
Yeah, good stuff. And Bob, are you looking for anything with the session? Any issues that you would like to champion, or anything that you're?
Yeah, I know. My wife put a personal plug in for the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers. She works for them, and one of the things that they're trying to get through, and I think this would be phenomenal and needs to happen yesterday, is a van. I know Tennessee, Arkansas, other states have come out with basically a truck or a van that would travel around the state, encourage people to get involved with
trades.
The trades.
Yeah, right, there we go.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, well, there's a lot
And
of
that's a strength I think we have.
There's going to be DEI policy dealt with we can talk about too.
That's great. Okay. Well, let's talk more about that in the next segment. I also want to talk about this Somali community here in Louisville. Actually, Louisville has one of the largest Somali communities in the U.S., so we're going to talk about that. Also, the shooting in Minneapolis. We'll be right back on Kentucky's Voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Kicked off the 2026 Kentucky legislative session. Top of mind on both sides of the aisle, setting the state's budget. WLKY's Alexis Matthews was in Frankfort today talking to lawmakers.
New year, new session, new look, but some state lawmakers have the same priorities, and that's to help pass legislation to help Kentuckians.
Members indicate your presence on roll call.
Kentucky lawmakers flocked to Frankfort Tuesday to begin work for the 2026 legislative session. Members of the House and Senate gavelled in for half an hour in temporary chambers while the Capitol is being renovated. Day one saw typical resolutions, including adopting House and Senate rules. Down the line, Democrat and Republican leaders will be laser focused on setting the state's budget for the next 2 years, worth around $15 billion. This amid a $156 million budget deficit, which Majority Whip Jason Nemes says is not a huge concern.
When you're talking about, several billion, we have $13 billion discretionary. That's not a lot of money. And so I'm not too worried about that. Our revenues remain strong. Our economy remains strong in Kentucky. And so I think we'll have the money that we need to do for our needs, not necessarily all our wants, but for our needs.
This session, House and Senate leaders appear to be aligned on priorities to help meet Kentuckians' needs. They plan to tackle policies around housing, livable wages, education, and Medicaid. And coming together amid uncertainty around actions by the federal government seems to be another goal for the General Assembly.
We probably come to agreement more than you would imagine, but that doesn't mean that we come to what we would like as the best thing that we could have, because this is a system of compromise.
This short legislative session is slated to end on April 15th. In Frankfort, I'm Alexis Matthews, WLKY News.
All right, so Jim, is there a lot of agreement amongst Democrats and Republicans in the legislature on issues such as
that will? I think there is in some cases. I think housing. Everybody knows something's got to be done. Now the rub is not so much agreeing on what the problem or challenge is. It's on what's the best solution and what's the right solution for taxpayers. And I think, for example, on housing, what we need to do is remove regulations on developers, remove the uncertainty of the process, and allow building to take place. We need, if we're we're going to keep young people in our state, we're going to end this problem of brain drain where young families are moving to other states so they can start families, buy a home. I think we're going to have to address that, and I don't think that's a partisan issue. It shouldn't be, but
it shouldn't be.
The Democrats will want more of the spend, and the governor talked about spending, doing this public-private partnership. But really, the best, most effective thing is going to be, let's make the process more certain. Let's allow the permitting process to be quicker, Tom. Right now, when developers apply for a permit, they don't know when they're going to get an answer. It can be months and years even in some cases. Yeah. So those are common sense policies.
Yeah, but the core issue with housing is not that so much. It is the fact that we have 20 to 30 million people in the country that shouldn't be here. And so if the session really wants to deal with housing issues, we need to get aggressive in supporting the federal government's efforts on deportation.
Well,
and if we're not doing that, then you cannot reduce the demand on housing, which is causing the housing crisis.
Well, don't think of it as an either or. I think this is
they need to. I haven't heard it. So, hopefully there's some.
I think it's
initiatives
both
out there.
Okay? I think it's both and. Well, I think we need.
Well, my question is: Are there any initiatives, bills being passed that's going to help address the illegal immigration issue in the state? I don't know.
Well, and there's also some efforts. President Trump just put a tweet out, or I guess on his social media site, that would address large corporations, basically from going in like they have been doing and buying.
That's important. Exactly.
Properties.
That's important. Listen,
what's that do? That shrinks the market.
That does shrink the market. Let me say this. I do own some rental properties, and literally for the past decade, every day I get 2 or 3 calls from some foreign call center saying, "Hello, you own the property on so and so and so. Would you like to sell it?" And literally every day,
absolutely.
and I'm not joking, every day, 2 or 3 times a day, and they all spoof call from 502 numbers. So I know what's going on. This is BlackRock.
Yep.
These are companies like, basically hedge funds in Wall Street that are buying up American,
and it is a problem.
Single-family properties so that Americans could become renters.
Yeah.
And so, that is an issue as well.
Yeah.
But the immigration issue is the elephant in the room.
My answer was, and that's true. And that shows how immigration just affects so many
everything. Yeah, it solves so many problems.
In looking at what our state legislature can do, there are some common sense things they can do right away that should not be hard at all. And none of this should be really, but for example, why does a lot size have to be bigger than what it needs to be? Some of these rules go way back, decades and decades, almost a century. Whereas now we need to, for example, developers want to build houses closer to each other. This is common sense. If you buy a certain tract of land, you can build more housing on that land with a simple removal of a stupid, dumb regulation, then that's also something that can be done.
But I tell you what, we have overbuilt apartments in this city and in this area.
I'm talking about homes.
Well, exactly right. But housing, that is a problem. We're taking all this low income housing and putting it into the suburbs as an Obama initiative, and that's still going on out there, and it's impacting a lot of these neighborhoods. But anyway, so what else? What else should the legislature be focusing on?
Let me mention a word about education here. In the One Big Beautiful Bill, which Beshear called, I think, the one ugly bill or whatever his term last night, but he's a nonpartisan guy. He's not partisan. But anyhow, in that bill was the federal tax credit scholarship program, and the legislature is going to take steps to opt Kentucky into that. And if they left it up to the governor, which some people initially thought it would have to be the governor that decided, and we thought if that happens, Beshear is not going to go along with that. So the legislature, I think, is going to be proactive on this. And I think, guys, at the end of this legislative session, the families of Kentucky are going to have school choice, despite what the unions here have fought us to prevent, despite Beshear's millions of dollars spent against this during that campaign, Amendment 2 campaign. It's going to be extremely good.
I unpack that more so I can understand that better. So why would we're going to have school choice at the end of this session?
We're going to have we're going to have a tax credit scholarship because which is a school choice, which allows. Let me explain it this way.
All right.
It'll do what we we passed a bill here in 2021 that is similar, and this bill allows individuals and businesses to contribute to a scholarship granting organization, a third-party nonprofit organization. They then hand those dollars out in the form of scholarships so that children can have a choice and a better education, take them to whatever school they want.
But that's not happening with this. Now we're doing a tax credit. That's different than this?
No, that was a tax credit. This will be,
tax credit.
And so whatever people donated, like a business or an individual donated, would have been applied against their state tax liability. This bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill, allows folks to apply that contribution against their federal tax liability. And this will allow up to a $1,700 contribution, and there is no limit in terms of the number of contributions that can be made on that. So, depending on how many people get engaged with this, will also determine how many students can participate and how much of a robust school choice program we can have here. But it's extremely satisfying that after all the lies and deception and manipulation of the unions and the governor and his team against school choice in Kentucky, we're going to have it here in spite of that.
Okay, so a parent can give that $1,700 towards their child's scholarship.
Well,
and
they
get a
can
tax credit,
they
right?
can contribute it to a scholarship granting organization.
Okay,
the organization will determine then those dollars and how they get dispersed, and that's still being worked out.
Okay,
the regulations, but the major important thing there is that this is going to transfer the power of where students go to school and the control from the system, from the government-run failed education system to the home, to the parents.
Is it a dollar for dollar tax credit?
I think this will be. Now, the one that was passed in Kentucky was like a 90-cent. 90 cents. It was close.
Anything about that being a directed donation? Where they could specify where they would want it to go.
I think they're still working this out, and I think there's going to be some opportunities that maybe to do some of that, but I don't know yet.
Okay, so if I'm someone that wants to participate in this, I can just write a check up to $1,700 to this nonprofit,
right?
And then, so in lieu of paying $1,700 in tax to the state or to the feds,
right? It would be applied. That's right. That would be applied against your tax.
I'm going to get my checkbook. So when can we do this? After the session?
Well, it'll depend on the implementation date. It'll probably be next year.
Next year. Okay.
But we'll follow this and we'll give you more details.
And then that organization will be responsible for distributing those funds.
That's right. And they'll have to use 90% of the funding for scholarships.
Wow.
So only a small amount can be used for administration. They'll have to really run a tight ship.
Is there a third-party nonprofit spun up to do this?
Well, we're working on that's also being developed right now. So it has to be done.
So Jim Waters is going to be distributing this money. So make sure you get on his good side because your kid might be able to go to nice school. So,
but again, let me be clear. I don't know that. I don't want to give the impression that you're going to be able to write a check to an organization and that necessarily that'll go to a particular school. It's going to depend on how those rules are written.
Okay, got it. Well, this is something to really follow.
This is great.
School choice changes everything. Listen, if we can get the left from educating your kids, if we can pull them away, that's it. They're done. That's the only thing they have because they don't have kids, right? They need your kids. They need to indoctrinate your kids. And so if we can get them, just wrestle the stranglehold of they have off of education, then the future of this country is bright.
Yeah, one other quick thing on that for this session. Senator Lindsey Tishner has filed legislation that would now we've removed DEI from the higher educational universe. Now this would remove it from the K through 12 and outlaw it and make it illegal to use DEI approaches in K through 12.
That's huge.
Beautiful. Okay.
It is big.
Well, that's great.
And it goes to what you were talking about the left controlling the agenda and controlling education.
Exactly right. So, we got about a minute left. I wanted to save a little bit of time to talk about these two issues going on in the country right now. Of course, this shooting in Minneapolis. I'm sure you've heard of this. If you haven't, ICE did a shooting yesterday. Let me see if I can pull this up. And Mr. Producer, we can play a clip of this. And basically you can see this lady starts, we got 30 seconds. We're going to play this real quick. There we go. That's the shooting. We'll break this. Whoa, watch the language there. But we're going to break this down in a little bit more detail after this segment. This is getting a lot of attention. ICE shot a lady. She was a white woman, 37, mother of 3, apparently a left-wing activist. I think somebody mentioned she was a lesbian, whatever. I don't, it didn't matter. Anyway, they shot her because she looked like she was trying to run over this officer. So we're going to talk about that after this segment.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right. Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, but I have my co-hosts today, Jim Waters and Bob Scott. And we were teasing Bob that we need to give him shorthand of it. We're going to go to BS for Bob Scott. But
and that's no BS.
That may not be the right word to use, but so I won't use that. But we did get a text that just came in from a viewer, said Tishner's bill on DEI is good, but we know the teachers union will use DEI by way of different social names. The bill must require serious oversight. So that's a very, very insightful comment there from one of our listeners.
And they're absolutely 100% correct.
Well, we've seen them succeed, though, with the higher ed. We've already had some experience with overseeing that, and it's been pretty successful, I think. So
good stuff.
I'm pretty optimistic about, and that's a great comment. It's a great point.
Yeah, good stuff. This is our last segment. I want to make sure we spend some time on this shooting up in Minneapolis and also the Somali issue. So I'm going to play this video. This is a slow motion of what happened, and you can kind of see the everything happened in slow motion here. So let's ignore the audio. I'm going to drop the audio. But I'm going to leave it up. There we go. See him draw the
and
weapon.
Again, these are federal
and he's trying to get out of the way. He gets
agents.
hit by the car. Right when this, these are federal agents that told this lady to stop and get out of the car. She decides to take off and hit one of the officers, and so he responds, trying to defend himself. He can't tell what direction that car is going. He's not looking at the wheels, and he just knows this thing's coming at me and it just hit me. And so anyway, it's tragic in so many ways. You see this, this mother, this 37-year-old mother. Who is now dead because she got caught up in all this left-wing, anti-ICE
lunacy. Yeah,
lunacy.
We'll say it for what it is.
It's just tragic. But at the same time,
are we? Let me ask you guys
you do
this question:
sort of thing?
Are we really surprised that something like this happened? It's truthfully a miracle that more people, law enforcement agents, again, doing their job. That's all they were doing.
That's right.
And trying to enforce the law that are being encouraged by Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis, as well as Tim Walz, the infamous governor who is now no longer going to run. Wonder why?
Right.
Should we be shocked? I guess that's my question back to you guys. Should we be shocked about this? And it's sad and it's despicable. That this has happened, but they are despicable for allowing the rhetoric, and I mean the extreme far left rhetoric to happen that in essence really helped lead to the demise of this woman. She and her mindset thought she was, in her mindset, was doing the right thing, but she had a vehicle, 3,500 to 4,000 pounds that could easily killed that law enforcement officer, and he was just responding to try to protect himself. And again, it's tragic that it happened. But my question is, we should have never even gotten here. And I got to throw this in as well. You're not seeing any whatsoever help or backup from the local Minneapolis Police Department. These were, I don't know how many law enforcement federal agents were there, but I've heard anywhere from 20 to 30. Trying to restrain a crowd of hundreds of quote unquote protesters. And there's a right way. I'm all for First Amendment rights in our country. True. That's what made us great. But there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. And what they've allowed to happen there and I could make an argument that I think this was somewhat intentional. What they've allowed to happen is putting in a situation like this where tragically someone lost their life as a result of it.
Exactly right. Yeah, you can put the blame on two groups here. You've got the far left who's using this rhetoric that dehumanizes ICE, dehumanizes people on the right, and calling us all Nazis, calling Trump Hitler and all this stuff. Well, and so what do? You fight tyranny like that if it's true. If that's really true, then you fight it, and you fight law enforcement. You overthrow the government. You become an insurrectionist. And so that language is and people are believing that. That language is helping people to act out that way. And then you got the second group you blame is Democrat leadership, who is playing into that. Like you said, the mayor, the governor there, just federal leaders. They're all buying into this narrative that all these people, all we're doing here is just enforcing the law. Right? This is just immigration law.
That's it.
So, and if you don't allow them to enforce the law, then we shouldn't have a country.
Well, and they're trying.
What's the point of having a country?
How many thousands has ICE removed of pedophiles and rapists and murderers? From our streets that were allowed by the previous administration to come in.
Let me get Jim's thought. I'm going to play this video real quick. This is another example of a police shooting from a vehicle-borne attack. And I want to show how this could have gone down and how when it goes bad. And so let me play this, Mr. Producer, and we'll show you this. This is there we go. That's what could happen, and this is what happens all the time in police work. Let me back this up. So watch this happen. This is a lady. This is a woman.
Get out of the car!
She was drunk. Marijuana. This is the police officer's face. They've seen this video. They all know that this is what can happen to me with a vehicle. I can get run over and killed. A vehicle is a weapon. And so, anyway, Jim, what are your thoughts on all this?
I don't know. Normally you don't see now that last video you did, but normally you don't see a law enforcement officer in front of the vehicle. Usually you saw one on the side. And so it looked to me like she was backing out. And then, of course, like you said, when she went forward, he didn't know where she was going to go. I don't know what the law is. But to your point about ideology and what you believe matters. It has impact, and it does affect people. And the rhetoric, like you said, has affected people. So, it's just a tragedy. I think we need to acknowledge it's a tragedy, all the way around because of that. And but when I first saw that, I really haven't watched it as much as you guys have today, but I heard a lot of discussion about it. So I don't know how that works on.
Well, at the same time, when you're trying to block somebody from leaving and you're trying to apprehend somebody,
and I have to say this is a strategy. That the far left and this is being primarily, and there's been a lot of stories that's come out about this recently, funded by several far left billionaires. One who is a fellow that's living in China or spends a lot of his time in China, deliberately, intentionally trying to sow discord.
Yeah, we know that's happening
in our nation. That's 100% happening.
It's a color revolution.
My comment was just about this particular incident, but going to say all of this is really, you're right. It's intentional. It's being created, ramped up. This is what we saw happen in socialistic, communistic societies where there was chaos created, for the very purpose of causing anarchy, of causing this type of environment that we see, especially in these far left cities and states.
Yeah, and really, when you look big picture, this is part of a playbook to unseat Trump and the conservative movement. It's if you really dig into this, there's
but I will say
organizations.
On this event,
well, let me finish this point, please. But at the end of the day, there is a deliberate movement to have a color revolution, which is to change these psychological, social, political mood in the country to bring the left back into power and creating this narrative that the right and Trump is somehow unjustly treating immigrants and they're acting just like the Gestapo. That's part of this narrative. It's part of their playbook.
Yes.
Sorry. And
go ahead.
I thought you were.
No. It's fine.
But on this particular, my point was just about this particular incident, and I'm not, as far as the training of law enforcement, what they're doing, I don't know. But overall, the point, I totally agree. I think it's, the ideology, and I think there's a lot of anti-Trump. It's just crazy how Trump derangement syndrome has taken over so many things. So I agree.
One more video for you, Jim. Jim, maybe this might help. This is a front perspective. This shows the vehicle actually hitting the police officers. So watch this. You can see that's the man right there. Hits him, and that's when he shoots. So I don't know.
Well, it's a dangerous
shot.
She put herself in that position, so
exactly
unfortunately.
Right.
Well, and that's again a part of their strategy,
right,
is to get in the middle of a law enforcement action. Now, come on, who in their right mind would do that? To actually get in the middle of a legal law enforcement action and try to do what they can to disrupt that and keep that from happening.
Exactly right.
Well, and that's, like you said, that's part of the far left's playbook, and I think when you're aware of that, it makes a real difference in how you interpret all of these things, and if you're just, hey, I hate Trump, anything against Trump, then you're not gonna have a good perspective on what's going on.
But they're going to try to create a George Floyd moment out of this.
100%.
They're going to try to make her a martyr, and in
Minnesota,
anyway.
right?
Yeah, exactly right. In Minnesota, right?
I mean, what's
exactly
going
right.
on up there?
Exactly right. Well, we have 2 minutes left. I promised the audience we would talk about the Somali issue. I just want to point out that we do have a large Somali community in Louisville. Now, I'm not casting aspersions to Somalis and to immigrants and as a whole, but there is a pattern that you can just see of third world immigrant groups coming in and basically, first of all, they use welfare and our social services at a much higher level than a native-born American, and then there tends to be a portion of that group that will find themselves in a fraud situations, and of course it's being highlighted in Minnesota with the Somali community. And I think that's just something we need to think about when it comes to immigration, especially illegal immigration. When you have a group of people that come here that aren't necessarily loyal to the people that make up this country, and then it's much easier to, hey, let's just take advantage of the system. None of these people were related to me, and I have no legacy with these folks. Let's just get their money and run. And so it's basically they're pirating. They're kind of just here to benefit themselves and not really. And so that happens in every third world community. I had a local Indian restaurant owner talk to me. Got about a minute left here. Talked to me a few years ago. Said, "So why are you He said this to me. This is a true story. Why are you Americans letting all these people in here? All these different ethnic groups are all running these scams." And he started running all the ethnic groups that he knew that ran all these different scams.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is 4 or 5 years. I was like, really? That's crazy. And now you're seeing all this come out. It's like, well, this is Louisville's. Let me say this. Got 30 seconds left. Louisville has up to 20,000 Somalis in this city. There's a place called the Somali International Mall over off 8th Street. Nothing but Somali businesses. Not saying there's a lot of fraud going on there, but
what I was happy about was they see a young Somali guy get on there and chastise his own community for taking so much and not giving and being just
let's
welfare.
Hope. But my question is, why are they here anyway? Why do we need Somalis here right now? Why do we need all this immigration? We don't need this. It's not good for America. So let's just roll it all back. End it. Stop immigration altogether for a while anyway. Okay, that's it for the show today. Thanks for watching Kentucky's Voice. We'll be back tomorrow.